Apparently that's it live.
Woo!
Woohoo! I think that's it live. So I've set my tweets, I've posted my posts, and yeah, we're live. So how are you doing today?
Good. Rested up. Rested up
Rested
today.
up. You had a late night last night, so you've been in
Very late, yeah. Late into early morning. So slept in today and did a little bit of work. A little bit.
Love it. Yeah. just to break the day up.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for getting out of your bed to come talk to us.
You're welcome.
So let's get this show on the road. Mum hasn't tuned in yet, but I'm sure she'll be along pretty soon. Let me just check what's going on. That's all good. That's all good. Tweets are out. Okay. Let's just go. Let's just do it.
Let's go for it.
So hello to everybody. This is Sorenzo Meets. My name is Tom Wall and I run Sorenzo Props, and this is my little slice of the internet where I like to talk to prop and cosplay people from all around the world who I like, who I want to talk to, and who generally are cool. Today I am joined by Laura Sindall. Is it Sindall?
Sindall, however you want.
Sindall, whatever you want. Laura is joining us all the way from down in England somewhere. I'm sure you're near London somewhere.
London.
But yeah, thanks for joining us. You're doing good today. You're rested, and I've got lots of questions for you. I'm hoping that some people will tune in and ask us some questions.
Awesome.
So let's get going. My first question to everybody who joins me on this show is, who the heck are you and what do you do?
Okay, I'm Laura. As you said, I'm London-based. I'm a cosplayer, and but I also work in the industry, which cosplay has probably helped fuel somewhat. Cosplay-wise, I've been cosplaying for about 10 plus years, maybe. Kind of old school. I think I started when I was about maybe like 16, 17. Going along to when cosplay really wasn't a big thing at all. It was quite niche and small, so it's kind of been fun to spend the last 10 years seeing how it's evolved and everything. So it's kind of been my cosplay journey. And professionally, I work as a I never really know quite the title to give myself for this. It's a little bit of everything. I guess what you would say I am. I work mostly in fabrication now, so that's soft fabrication. In film and TV and video games, and that's creating costumes and props and things and creature suits. And that's something that I learned. So a lot of self-taught stuff through cosplay and everything. But I also did do a degree in that was called Technical Effects of Performance. I did at the London College of Fashion, which kind of taught you basic stuff for special effects. So we learned a bit of mold making, a little bit of like building fat suits and things like that, and my degree. And yeah, and then I went on to work as a special effects artist after that, and here I am now. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, you kind of answered like the first 3 or 4 questions.
Oh, sorry. I can expand on them.
No, that is perfectly acceptable. You're going to have to expand on that. So, right, you've been a cosplayer for 10 or so years. Was it even called cosplay back then, or was it just called dressing up?
It was called cosplay at that point, and it was one of those things where I remember back then everyone was arguing about like who came up with it. Was it like a American thing, or was it like a Japanese thing? Because there was a whole thing of like in Japan, people dressed up a lot as like anime characters and stuff, but then obviously you still had especially in the States, you had all the like Star Trek conventions and stuff. So I remember back then it was very much like a them and us kind of thing, a little bit sometimes. Yeah, I think it was called cosplay. Yeah. But it was really different. I think the first time I ever went out and dressed up in public was at a Final Fantasy launch at the old HMV in Oxford Street, which is now gone. And I went along by myself as like a 16-year-old in like a little costume I made. And I went along like half in costume, I think. Went along and saw all the cosplayers going inside and felt really embarrassed, a little bit like, oh, what am I doing? Why am I going along to this? And I started to walk back. It sort of did a little bit of walk of shame. And then decided like, no, I'm gonna do this. And then I think I went and got changed in a McDonald's toilet. into the rest of my costume, and then went along to the launch, and then kind of haven't really looked back since. I made a lot of friends there. In fact, I met my best friend there, who I then lived with for a year, and is someone that is still my best friend now. Yeah, so it's kind of nuts, really, how it's evolved from that. And you know, how conventions like the MCM Expos and stuff and everything were nothing like what they are now. They were these really small little events, and cosplay was much more this was before the big like Marvel films and everything came out, and like Big Bang Theory, which made like geeks like kind of like a sexy thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that I used to see was anime and manga. It was very Japanese influenced. So most of my friends used to cosplay as, you know, things from that, but I didn't really watch a lot of anime or read manga, so I never really quite knew what was going on in the scene. So it's been a little bit more.
It's still the same with anime and manga, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
Most people don't quite know what's going on. But
I'm like, oh, what's happening? But back then, that was like pretty much what everyone did all the time. It was really common then, and so I felt really out of place. So it's kind of even though I loved, you know, cosplay back then, it's great to see how it was. It's nice that it's evolved into a lot of Western like comics and things and films, which is much more, I think, my style. That I'm interested in, just design wise as well, and stories and everything. So yeah, so it's kind of fun to see how it's evolved now, and it's much more comic book related now and everything, and all the because like all the Marvel stuff's now hit off. So it has really changed over 10 years. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's changed over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years that I've been involved in it.
Yeah,
so it's come on leaps and bounds. It's almost too popular in some instances.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it?
So, what was your first costume? Oh, you mentioned that. Did you make that from scratch?
Yeah, I did. My first costume was it was Lightning from Final Fantasy 13, and it was before the game had it was like years before the game came out. Because even with Final Fantasy, I think it's 15 now, or 16. Is it 15? I can't remember all the numbers. The latest one about to come out, that was advertised like 10 years ago, even when I was making this costume, I remember, because I'm seeing the images of Storm, the new character and everything. So I did Lightning because I just thought she was kind of a cool character. And I'm trying to know how I made it all. I think I bought a lot of stuff from charity shops. I bought like a little white shirt, and I did the details on it, and I think I made her shoulder armor out of some old milk bottles, and you know, it was very thrown together. There's a really embarrassing picture of me, if you do Google my name, that you can find on the BBC of me like wearing it. I look awful, and I've like sprayed my hair pink, which I have like uploaded and just been like, this is me then. Like a before image, you know. But it's kind of fun to look back on stuff like that, because I just remember being really excited and making that at home and feeling a little bit awkward, I suppose, just because, you know, no one at my school was into anything like that or interested, so I sort of always had to keep it a little bit down low, I suppose. But it was a great kind of release and like of going out wearing that. But yeah, it's not. I'd like to think I've improved since then.
I would think you have, yeah. No, that's really interesting, because it's not often you meet people who usually I talk to people who've been doing it for a couple of years, but you're probably a veteran at it now, so it's interesting to see how it has changed.
Yeah.
What made you do it? Like, if cosplay wasn't on the radar and if nobody was really doing it and you didn't know anybody doing it, why did you all of a sudden decide to head out to the center of London dressed up like a...
Yeah, because I didn't know I had no friends that did it, and it wasn't a popular thing that anyone would even know what it was. I got into it, I think, because I was I was always a bit of a geeky child, and I liked playing my video games and stuff, and I really liked all the old Final Fantasy games, and I remember, I think I always liked dressing up. I'd always go a little bit above and beyond for like my Halloween costumes. Like, I'd make all these like Edward Scissorhands like costumes with like, you know, foil scissor hands and things like that. So I was just sort of always into the dressing up and making side of things. I think I was just Googling images of Final Fantasy characters or something like that at the time. And then up came some pictures of people dressed up as the characters. And I thought, that looks like so much fun. I'd love to do that. And I saw these conventions, the big ones like in America, and seeing all these people go to like conventions, you know, in these groups all dressed up as the characters I love. And I thought, oh, that looks amazing. Like, I'd love to do that. But none of my friends or anything like that were into anything like that or interested in it or even would be aware of what it was. So I just thought like, so I started looking up like the UK scene, and back then, I mean, there really wasn't a scene. I think, I'm not even sure if Facebook even really existed back then when I was about 16. Maybe it just started.
I don't think
So,
Facebook's anywhere near 10 years old, is it?
yeah,
Remember.
I'm trying to think. I
Probably
remember.
a MySpace or Bebo or something like that.
Yeah, I think people use MySpace more and stuff for it. Or then there were a lot of, I mean, people then used the actual websites back then. So like cosplay.com was like a massive thing. That was where everything was. And then there were UK sites that a friend of mine, Kat, set up called Cosplay Island, which is a UK cosplay-based website. Everyone used that. And then there are a few Japanese ones. I genuinely can't remember all the names of them now because I don't think really anyone uses them anymore. And that's kind of then how I found a bit of a community going. And then you'd look up like convention forums and stuff, and you'd post on those to find people. So yeah, that was kind of the best way really to meet anyone on those things back then. It's kind of odd to think about that now. I haven't visited any of those websites for such a long time. I kind of try and go on them, but then there's no traffic. Like people don't visit them as much anymore, which is a shame because they're a really good way of like, you know, cataloging all your costumes and everything on there. They were really good sites. But yeah, it was kind of, that was the only way back then to really meet anyone or find anything.
I've visited them in the past, sort of doing reference and stuff, and they seemed quite good. But I think social media has just kind of eradicated anything like that. You know, even the likes of blogs and forums seem to be on the wayside.
Oh yeah, like everyone used to post everything on LiveJournal. I remember back then. Like everyone had a LiveJournal cosplay account, and that does not exist now.
I'd never heard of LiveJournal.
Yeah. Oh, okay. There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it was like a blog basically that people could. It was kind of like a diary almost. People used, and yeah, MySpace. I think people used quite a lot as well. Bizarre, isn't it?
Well, we're showing our age now, aren't we?
I feel a bit old now.
Back in the MySpace days, dear, oh dear. Before we went live, we were having a rant about that Facebook always changing. We don't know how to use it anymore.
I feel really old every time I go to conventions now, or I go out and like, you know, to like little parties afterwards, after conventions, and chat to them. Then I'm like, I feel so old, like I feel so out of place.
I want to go back to my hotel room and get in a bath.
Yeah.
Right. So you have an extensive cosplay history. You've done a lot of costumes, probably a lot more than I know about. But I'm interested.
Remember half the time.
You can't remember them. Wow. I think I can list mine on one hand, you know. But I want to know more about your job, because it is extremely interesting, and I do have some people on this show that do props as a living. I do have some people who do other completely random things as a living, but you actually work making props and costumes for the movie industry and for video games and stuff. So I'm very curious to find out a lot more about that. I'm sure people at home are, but I want to know, and it's my show, so I'm going to find out more about it. So I know you're working in the movie right now. I know you've been working in movies for a few years now, is it?
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit more about that? How you got started out, what you've been doing? Just tell us about that.
Yeah, okay. So I suppose that started out, I should say, like I mentioned before, I did my degree in what I suppose you could call, in simple terms, a special effects kind of degree. And before that I started a fine art degree, but quit halfway through, and then and did a bit of a foundation year before that even. So I did have like about 5 years worth of uni time, I suppose, where I was training into special effects. But a lot of my stuff, I guess, is self-taught in a sense. But straight after uni, I was really lucky. Well, actually, during uni, I should say first, I always chased up a lot of work with different studios and things. So it's difficult. There's so many avenues. I'm trying to think which is the easiest path to follow with this. Okay, I'll stay with the more like professional work side of it. If that makes sense. So during uni, even I did a lot of internships with various companies. One of them being during summer. I was really fortunate that I went. I'm trying to think what year it was. 2010, I think. I went to LA and I lived over there for a while, and I worked with a company called Amalgamated Dynamics, who are one of the Stan Winston schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working over there, and they're the guys that are behind all of like the Alien films and Predators films, the AVP versus and whatnot. And they did the thing, and they just recently did their Kickstarter of Harbinger Down, which is a full practical effect film. So I worked there for a while doing, I'm trying to remember what I was doing there. I think we were doing, I was doing a little Predator model. That was it. That was really cool. We were doing a lot of the Predator suit bits, and they were making this like scale model of a Predator. It was really cool. The ones that they make for like sideshow collectibles.
Yeah.
They get a lot of like guys from like Legacy or Spectral Motion or Amalgamated, who are all companies in America that make creature costumes and stuff. And we were making a Predator costume for that. So I was making all of his like little mini clothes and things and stuff for it that they would then, we would pattern off and then send off to get produced and everything. So I did that. And we also did work on the X-Men First Class film, doing the Beast suit. Yeah, it was all the foam latex running up that suit and everything. And it was a really big like learning step for me, that, because it was sort of the first time I'd really worked in the industry in creatures before. I'd worked on films before when I was younger, doing things like costume running and stuff, but never actually like really making something that was part of a film. So that was really an incredible experience to have, still as a student, like on an internship. So that was a really fun experience, and I still chat to those guys now, and they were really supportive. And then after I finished my degree, I then went on to work at a company called Artem. There is also a branch in Scotland.
There was. I'm not sure if it's still around. I've heard various. They are still around. I think they might be reduced in scale or something. I've heard something recently about that. Yeah.
2 full-time staff there, but they still have the branch there. Yeah, so I went and worked at a company called Artem that I worked at for about 4 years. I worked there freelance at first, but also as a full-time special effects artist. And I learned a lot there, because you kind of have to do a little bit of everything, which was a really great thing, because obviously my speciality was a little bit more towards, I'd done a lot of costume work privately, like I do a lot of commissions and stuff, which I'll go back to, that I'd done prior to that. But I learned, whilst I was at Artem, I learned a lot of prop making and model making, mold making. I learned just a little bit about like the kind of engineering side of things, not that I would be able to really do any of that properly, but you know, you kind of get an appreciation for it. So I spent a lot of time doing, working in every part of all the different departments, really, I suppose, there. And then I left there about, it was about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, I think, to go freelance again. And since then I've been, pretty busy. I've been working on, I can say I was working on Beauty and the Beast last year.
Yep.
Which I think is coming out next year. So I was working on that last year for quite a while. And then at various other workshops, doing all kinds of like fun projects and things. Mostly the work that I do now is soft fabrication. So it is like creature suits, like building muscles and stuff, or doing like costume prop things. I don't do quite as much model making anymore, which is stuff that I did more when I was at Artem. But I think my love is more, it's kind of towards more soft fabrication work, which I really like doing. And and then I did Beauty and Beast last year, a few more bits and pieces with other companies. And then I've been on another film at the moment for the last 6 months or so. So yeah, it's been busy. But then I should add then prior to a lot of that, whilst I was at uni and before that, I started working in the video games industry a lot, making costumes and props for various companies. I've worked with, I'm trying to think of the list now, with PlayStation, Nintendo, with Xbox, 2K, Namco, oh God, I'm not going to remember all the, Ubisoft, making all kinds of things for them for various like promo events and stuff. I've worked on 2 of the Assassin's Creed games, making some promo costumes for them. I've done a few. I did a Link costume. Loads, really. I've done a lot. And I still do those things now. So they're kind of nice things that I've been doing, I suppose, that for the last maybe 6 to 8 years. That I've always had as a kind of side thing, but now being freelance again, I can kind of give that a little more time. So I still do those in between things on films, which is really nice. So yeah, that's it kind of in a nutshell, I suppose.
I'm just taking notes down here, and you're name dropping like everybody is like totally awesome. I'm just like, all right, I'm just gonna hang up now. I hate you. These guys are going. No, that's amazing. That is that's some resume. of people that you're working with. The internship in LA. How did you go about getting that? You're still at uni. You end up in LA working for one of the best companies ever. How did that happen?
I was very lucky. This is kind of how the industry works, in that it's all about who you know. Yeah. I know that's so horribly cliche.
Yeah.
But it's true. So I'm going to have to pedal back several years here. So I should probably mention, so my parents both work in the industry, but not in the making side of it. My dad is a cinematographer.
Okay.
And my mum was as well. In fact, she was actually the first ever female camera operator in the UK, which is kind of cool. But she's now a sculptor. And my dad worked on a film called Thunderbirds that came out 15 years ago or something. The Thunderbirds film that they had. And one of the kids in it, a guy called Soren, I made good friends with on set as I was growing up. And he happened to live in LA. And then when I was older, and we must have been 19 maybe, I went over to LA with a bunch of UK cosplayers, in fact, to a convention over there called Anime Expo. And we all went over to visit. And at the same time, I thought, I can visit my friend while I'm out here. So I stayed with my friend and his family for a week. Turned out they're like best mates with Alec Gillis, who co-owns Amalgamated Dynamics with Tom Woodruff. So I was like, I'm a huge Aliens fan. You've got to get me a visit to the studio. And I was already doing my degree by that point. And they were like, yeah, sure, it's fine. So I went along with them. And Alec was so incredible. Like, he gave us this whole tour of the studio, talking to me. And I was just like asking questions and just talking about everything that was there all the time. And I was like, and I just kept talking to him. And then he basically at the end of it was like, if you ever want to come over, work here, you're welcome to. And I was just like, so obviously I snapped that opportunity up and ended up out there for a few months. I think I was out there, working with them. So so it is all about like a weird thing from years ago is sort of how that came about.
Oh, that's awesome. That's what it's all about. Yeah, it definitely is about who you know.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And you've been freelance for the last couple of years. Was there any particular reason why you went from, like, obviously R10 was probably a full-time?
Yeah, it was a full-time job.
Any reason why you decided to go freelance?
It was just the right time, really. Because I'd been freelance prior to that anyway. And then, I mean, it was great having, like, straight out of uni to then go into, a full-time position, so you're not worried and thinking, oh God, when's the next work? Where am I getting money from, a job from? But I'd always told myself I didn't really want to be there as a full-timer, because I'd already been there for 2 years freelance prior, and then I was there full-time. Actually, it might have been 3 years. I can't quite remember. But I kind of told myself I didn't really want to be there much more than like 2-3 years full-time, and then wanted to go on and do other things. And it was a great place to learn a lot of stuff. But it was just at that point where I felt like I was quite ready to go back to being freelance again, and working on. I think because they do quite a lot of they have a lot of amazing projects that come in there. But a lot of it's quite mechanical. It's a lot of big rigs and things. Like, it was quite rare that fabrication jobs came in. I mean, we were really lucky. We had we did the Master Chief suits from Halo there, and the Titanfall suits with Xbox as well there, which is probably my favorite job I did there. So those jobs were brilliant. It was basically making like cosplays on like a big budget. So that was really cool. But those were kind of like, there weren't enough of them for me to want to stay there. So quite often then I'd be doing odd bits in between. So I kind of thought, like, I love those jobs and I want to do them all the time. So it just kind of came to the right point for me to move on, I suppose. But I still go and work there now. I was working there last year they had more Halo suits come in. So I went in and freelanced with them on those. So I still go back.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, it's quite often a thing when I get contacted by people who want to kind of do this professionally, whether it's props or cosplay, and my recommendation is always to make sure you have something that pays the bills, and you shouldn't really give it, because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I've made something, put it on the internet, I'm just going to quit my job and I'm going to start making them full time. And I'm like, stop what you're doing right now. But it's interesting that you kind of you did that, you got the job that paid well, you got the experience from it, and then you decided to go full time. So it seems like you've been following a path This is going to be like a two-part question that I usually ask. I usually ask people what their future path is. Do they have a plan for the next year, for the next 5 years, or whatever? But I want to know, like, when you first started out in university, did you kind of see yourself going the route that you went? And how is it different from what you saw? And then what do you see yourself going in the future?
I suppose, yeah, when I was at uni, I think this kind of was the path I thought I would take. I was just hoping that I'd be able to get some good jobs and like experience under my belt, I suppose. And for a while, I think when I was at Artem, I was quite interested in the idea of setting up my own company. But I'm a little less interested in that now. I think I'm quite enjoying it. I'm quite enjoying at the moment being a freelance worker and, you know, jumping from job to job. And I think it suits my lifestyle at the moment. So I suppose in 5 years, 10 years even, I'd quite like to do a few more films still, get a few more films under my belt. And then I suppose either the kind of natural progression in my career path is that either you keep doing that and you eventually then you become like a supervisor on things. So quite often, like on a film, you'll have the whole department, you'll have like a head of like the whole thing, but then you'll have lots of different departments. So you'll have the mech department, the fabrication department, mold shop, hair, you know, painting, and then each of those will all have a head of department as well. So I probably then eventually, you know, that would be kind of one of the natural progressions, is that, and you hopefully become a head of a department. And then, you know, if you're really kind of lucky, I suppose, you then, or like you keep working hard enough at it and you might become like even a big enough name that you can run a whole job. So I suppose that's kind of a natural progression for me at the moment, but I'm still a little bit I'm not quite sure where I quite see myself. I still like the idea of possibly running my own business a little bit more and doing that, because I do quite enjoy doing those things. Like, it's really nice, like kind of my downtime in between films, to work on commissions and things at home in my studio and build things. And that's quite fun to do. And I do like doing that. But at the moment, I think I'd find that too claustrophobic. But possibly in like 10 years, you know, if I'm kind of starting a family or whatever, like all those kind of things you have to think about in the future, then it might be one of those things that possibly I would want to stay at home working more and everything, which is kind of what my mum did. She was a cinematographer as well, like my dad. And, you know, they had me. And if you're on a film, you basically don't see your friends or family. Which all my poor friends have suffered greatly from over the last few months. So
yeah, well, when you run your own business, you don't see your friends or
no, I know you don't. Like, I suppose if you might see your family, but like my mum then works from home as a sculptor now, so she then works. So then she started working from home to raise me. So I suppose that's kind of one of the paths you still. But no, you still don't see anyone. You just don't. We're destined to be hermits.
Yeah, excellent. There was 2 or 3 questions I want to ask you during the period of that. So as a freelancer, you go and you work other places. So obviously you're using their workshops, their facilities. Is that generally done? Where is that done? Is that like done on sets? Do they build places for it? Is there places that you tend to go to? Or is it studios? Tell me a little bit more about that. Yeah,
so it depends. So, for example, if I'm working somewhere like Artem or other special effects houses, places like Millennium or Anarchy, Aztec, Hot House, Prop Shop, Mold Shop, all those places, they machine shop rather, they all have, like Artem, for example, are a big setup. So they have loads of different rooms all set up with all the machines and different, like they've got a little fabrication room, they've got the welding bay, they've got woodworking area, they've got all the CNC machines, it's all laid out, so it's ready to go. So when you turn up there as a freelancer, you get your bench and it's all laid out and it's always pretty much the same, everything's in its place. And a lot of other places, somewhere like Anarchy or Millennium Effects, are all they're all the same like that. When you go on films, they're a little bit different because obviously those are only set up in theory for a few months, and then that all gets taken down and then something else comes in, because they're all just temporary things. So say if it's like at Shepperton or Pinewood or something, they quite often all those places have big workshops, like spaces set up, which are just sort of big tin sheds. But you know, they're quite often, they are kind of, I guess that they're designed in mind that they're going to turn into various like workshops. But then like a lot of the time the machines are all rented in sometimes. You know, people bring a lot more of their own stuff in. So you quite often, so for example, so if I'm in a fabrication area, they'll rent in loads of industrial sewing machines and industrial overlockers. But then I'll quite often bring my own machines in just because I know the quirks and I like how my one works with certain things. And you bring all of your own, you bring a lot more tools in, I think, then probably. And then those things are all quite temporary. So it's all these like very temporary like work shelf storage things all built up, all the foam stuffed in a bit and like boxes of things everywhere, because it all has to eventually at the end of the job be packed up and gone for the next film to come in. So yeah, so it works differently depending on each, but which is kind of nice. It's sort of fun because obviously it's lovely going to a workshop somewhere like Artem, for example, and then it's all just set up and lovely. So you know, you don't have to worry so much, it's all there. And then but it's kind of fun with films as well because then you can kind of make it, everyone lays it out how they need it just for that job as well. So they both got positives like to them. They're a bit different.
Yeah. Oh, sounds great. Sounds great. Some I've never experienced because I've only ever just worked in my own shop, and
yeah,
as I like it. So it must be nice to go somewhere else and work a little bit differently. Yeah. What's your workspace like at home? I'm assuming you don't do huge, big, dusty, noisy, industrial type jobs there. It's usually more fabric and sewing, is it? Textiles?
Yeah, so I usually have, at the moment I'm moving, so I can't really show you an example because I'm moving on the weekend. So everything is in boxes. But usually how I've had my workshop set up before is I usually have a big cutting table out, and I have all my sewing machines. I've got about 4 sewing machines, I think. And I have them all like lined up on the side of a shelf upside it. And I usually have just loads of bookcases and stuff with all like things in them. I've got a big chest of drawers with all my fabrics laid out. I usually have I have a big pin board behind me with all my tools hung off it. And yeah, so it's not it's probably not the same as yours where you'll have lots of like big machines and stuff everywhere. When I need to do work like that, I either go and pester my parents because my dad's got quite a nice sort of it's a shed, but he calls it the workshop. We have to call it, which it is kind of a workshop. It's really nice, actually. It's a little space out the back of their garden with loads of machines and stuff in. So I sometimes go there to do bits of work, or I just call in favors and go to somewhere like Artem and just on like a weekend. I've done that before in the past. I've just gone in the weekend to just use like their mold shop room just as a space that I can do kind of, you know, smelly, horrible work in. Because I can't really do that in my flat.
You can, but it's not advisable, is it?
It's not ideal.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. So you can just call in a favor and go to like a really fancy workshop, like Artem.
I bring my own supplies, but yeah.
Do you understand like the heat that's flowing through here? So I'll just go down to Artem and use their state-of-the-art facilities. Wow. I am jealous. That is pretty cool.
The perks of the job at the time.
No, that is good. No, if you can call in a favor like that, call it in as often as you possibly can. So you've had you're a little bit different to most folk. You've had like a university education doing this sort of thing. You've had industry experience, but who have been like your influences and your inspirations? I suppose we can relate that to your professional, but also towards your sort of more personal cosplay kind of side of things.
Oh gosh, okay. I suppose they're both a little bit different in a sense. So I suppose a lot of people, but like, you know, a lot of the studios as I was growing up were big influences to me. Studio DDT, a Spanish company, they're the guys that do all the stuff for like Pan's Labyrinth, some of the Hellboy films. They were really big influence to me. When I was younger, you know, like I saw Pan's Labyrinth and was like, oh God, I'd love to work on a film like that. Just stunning design as well. Yeah, it's gorgeous. I mean, that's, you know, Guillermo del Toro is like a huge influence of mine. Like I would love to work on one of his films. I just keep hoping that like Hellboy 3 is going to happen one day. So I can like.
I think everybody's hoping that will happen.
I know, just please. So I'm really hoping that happens so I can, yeah, try and get on a film like that. So people like that are huge influences to me. And then I'm trying to think, like, I don't know, with cosplay wise, if there's, I suppose I just try and think back to like when I was younger, you know, and looking up cosplay when I was 16, like on my computer, and seeing like kind of the famous cosplayers back then who, you know, there's still people obviously like Yaya who's still around and is like a huge name. But then there are a lot of people who kind of don't really do it much anymore. I'm trying to think of some of there was a girl called Jaya, who was like an amazing, I really liked a lot of her props and costume bits she made. I don't know if she cosplays as much anymore, but you know, people like that when I was kind of growing up with cosplay were quite big on the scene in America, and I really loved a lot of their work. But like, I suppose, yeah, professional wise, it would have been a lot of like, you know, the Stan Winston school guys all were a big influence to my work. And then things like artwork wise, I still am now like a huge fan of Yoshitaka Amano, who does all of the designs for Final Fantasy and all of their game artwork. Okay. And I've done a lot of cosplays from his stuff now as well. And like, I always just find his artwork just such an inspiration to my own, trying to emulate that like really organic feel, this like kind of beautiful flow that he has to his work. So he's always been a big influence of mine. But yeah, I don't know, God, there's probably loads. I'm trying to think of
too many to list.
Ones to actually pin down and names to pin down. There's always been like a lot of creature performers as well. So people like Doug Jones, even though like he's not a maker,
yeah.
You know, someone like that who brings all those creatures to life was a really big influence, you know, just because then you can think like, wow, someone like that can really bring all your work to life and create this whole beautiful character out of it. So people like that were a big influence as well, and like Andy Serkis and stuff. And then obviously places like Weta were huge influences of mine. Yeah, which is pretty, yeah. So loads of companies like that, I suppose.
Some list, all right, definitely.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to pick down. I think it's never ending.
Who was the first sort of like mainstream cosplayer? Like you mentioned Yaya, who has been around the longest. Was she the first, or was there anybody else that kind of was doing it, like sort of made it seem like, oh, this is cool? There are actually people who are like, you know, celebrities in the
she was probably still one of the first, and it's kind of amazing how she still is. Like I you know, credit where it's due. I think it's incredible what she has achieved and is still achieving. I think it's, you know, a real testament to how hard she works at it and how much she loves doing it. Because she was a big name even like 10 years ago when I was just starting out. You know, she was famous back then. And I think she did have her business just setting up then as well. And so she was kind of one of the first cosplayers to really set it up as like a business. I'm trying to think who else was kind of well known back then. It would be people that like just a lot of them aren't necessarily as known now. There's people like a guy called Matt Mercer, who was an amazing cosplayer who did all these like really amazing Sephiroth cosplays from Final Fantasy. And he always loved like the acting side of it and stuff. And he's now actually a voice actor and does incredibly well out of it. I'm trying to think all the ones he's done. He's done a bunch of voices in like Resident Evil and like the Thundercats cartoons, and he's done much better stuff than that. I'm probably listing like smaller ones. He's done loads of things since. I probably should look up his IMDb, but he's done some amazing stuff. So it's kind of been cool to see like his journey as a cosplayer, like now to what he's doing, which is pretty impressive. I'm trying to think of other ones back from then. It wasn't obviously the same as it is now because things like Facebook didn't exist, so that you couldn't really go by like, you know, how many like page likes someone had, how many shares and comments, blah blah blah. Like that didn't really exist as much. Obviously, you had like people would upload photos and you could see, you know, how many views or comments it got, and then it was more just kind of like word of mouth than anything. I think that people then got to know you by. And yeah, and just by reputation, I think that people kind of got known. I think there were, I'm trying to think if cosplay guests existed then. I think they not quite the same capacity they do now, but you did get like, you know, cosplayers being invited as judges and stuff for masquerades and whatnot. Like that definitely happened. And it was usually people who had won contests before or were kind of well known because they'd done like a really amazing costume that people were talking about, or they'd been featured quite a lot on a website because they'd done like some amazing costume. So that kind of thing happened. And then I think Yaya might be one of the first people that had like actual like booths and stuff. Yeah. But that was more because of like the business side of what she had. I think other than that, cosplayers having booths wasn't really a thing until I would say over the last maybe like 3-4 years. Yeah. I want to say that's happened. Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of changed a lot, really. But people were still, you know, it was still the same thing of like, I think, I'm trying to think if masquerade's more popular back then or now. Because the UK scene like has grown a lot in the sense of like how people, you know, if people perform more in masquerades and things like that. Whereas in the States, I think that was always quite a big thing. So they did have a lot of like, you know, cosplay guests and judges and whatnot in for those, especially. I can't remember what the question was anymore. I went off on a tangent, sorry.
That's all right. Like always, the UK is just kind of catching up. Yeah, I know, because like cosplay's been pretty huge for like, you know, 15-20 years in the, well, not huge, but it has been around for 15-20 years in the US, and it's been huge for the last 10 years or more, you know. And like I said, Yaya has built a business out of it. She was probably the only person that had something to sell up until the last couple of years, and then you got people doing prints and books and merchandise and stuff like that. Guesting at conventions is interesting, because you, I first met you down at London Super Comic Con last year. You seem to be a permanent guest down there, as far as I know. When did you first start doing that? When did you start getting invited to conventions to be a guest and to have a booth and stuff?
I think I'm trying to first time I was invited. I think I would have been invited quite a long time ago to conventions, but that was back before booths and stuff was such a thing. So I used to get invited to conventions to be like a judge or whatnot, usually at masquerades, and it might be because I'd won a few contests or something that then I'd get to then I was invited to judge. And then being invited and having like a booth and stuff has only really happened, I suppose, over the last 3 years maybe. But we try and make a point, like me and Lex were guests this year at London Super Comic Con again, and we tried to make a point, like I've tried to do this a few times at mine, where I've had things out on display, and we made a really big point about it this year, that we had like all of our progress books out from our costumes, and we had little displays of our costumes from like one year that we were there together. We had our He-Man costumes out, and we had little examples, like I think I had some ice dyeing examples of fabrics that I did there, and Lex had some beading out, and she was like doing loads of beading like at her table while people were going past, and we had loads of like little flyers out and things on how to do stuff. So we were really trying to make it, and we just had loads of pictures out on display everywhere, and it was really fun, and our tables looked utterly ridiculous, just covered in things and all kinds of stuff hanging everywhere, and we were trying to make it kind of, I think, which we've both tried to do, just because Lex has been doing it for just as long as I have, if not a bit longer actually. Yeah. So we're trying to make it quite educational, just so that other people can, so not just obviously so that cosplayers can learn a bit from us and they can come ask us questions, but also so that, you know, because not like, as it were, like normal people come to conventions as well now because it's so big, you know, and they come over and they go like, what's cosplay? And there's all these people at tables and go like, what's happening? And if it's just loads of like prints and things out, they kind of go like, don't really get it. So so we were trying to make it a bit more, I guess, incorporating for everyone to come along and see what we were doing. Which interactive. Yeah, basically. And it was something I had a really good experience with actually when I was at I did I'm trying to think when this was. This was about maybe 6 months ago. The V&A, the Victorian Albert Museum in London, they usually do these like late Friday nights, like a lot of the museums in London do. And they did one recently about video games, and they contacted me saying, you know, we're doing a night on video games. Can you come along in costume and like, you know, and show off some of your video game costumes and things? And I had a whole table set up there and like all these mannequins with about 3 of my costumes on, and I was in a costume, and it was just all members of the general public then, because it's all people that come out like on London nights out, like the Time Out crowd. Yeah. I kind of like to call it. you know, coming along, and I had like some wigs out and props out and like all my books out and like how I made each of my costumes and stuff, my progress books from contests. So I brought all of those in, and everyone was just loving it. They were just really interested in it, because these are people that just had no idea what cosplay was. And they were just asking things. They were like, so you make all these costumes yourself? Like, and you learn how to do it? And, you know, and then they were really amazed. They were like, you do this like for a living, making these things, and just really intrigued by the whole thing. And I just thought, like, what a great experience, you know, like being able to share this really the really creative side of cosplay to the public. So I think that's kind of thing that, like, when I have tables, I'm trying to bring those things along. So it's just more of like, so I can bring like, interactive kind of like educational things along for people to have a look at. And I think one of the things that, like, I know that me and Lex really try to push is, like, you know, we really try and help out if we can other people when they ask us questions about things. We're always really trying encouraging. You know, we do a lot of panels. I'd say actually I've probably done panels at conventions for the last probably maybe 6-7 years. But, you know, things like a lot of like places like Amicon or Iacon, like all the kind of little conventions. I've done like prosthetic panels, like 3-day prosthetic panels and stuff at conventions before. You know, we're talking about like cosplay contests and things. So I've been doing that actually for quite a while, doing like panels and stuff, and always trying to share like knowledge and how, you know, my experiences and how to build certain things and stuff. So it's kind of nice. I kind of prefer that side of it, I think. I've done that abroad as well. I've done that in, like, I went to Denmark and did some, at a convention there, and did some prosthetic panels. And I'm trying to think, did I do one in The Hague? I went over to The Hague to judge as a guest over there, and I can't remember. But there's been a few conventions abroad and stuff as well that we've done things like that at. So that side of it, I kind of like that bit more, doing like interactive panels and things. They're kind of fun. They're a lot of prep, but they're fun.
What do you think people enjoy most about conventions? Because obviously they've changed a lot, and there's some of them that are not as enjoyable as others. I know London Super Comic Con was one of my favorites of last year, but then you go to something like MCM and it's not such a nice experience. It's a kind of a different event. But what do people kind of enjoy? What do people tend to go for, particularly related to cosplay? I know there's people go for artists and celebrities and stuff like that, but for the cosplayers, what do you think their main attraction for a convention is?
I suppose, I mean, I'm sure everyone's probably got their own I don't know, incentives, but I would say for cosplayers it's probably more just as a way to meet up with other cosplayers, you know, and get some nice photos and groups together and stuff. That's what it's kind of always been about. Like, even 10 years ago, it was kind of a big social thing. So, you know, I'd go along to a convention and I knew that some of my mates were dressing up as something. And so we'd either do like a little group, or, you know, it'd be really cool because I've been following all their progress and how they made their costume, and I wanted to see it. And it was, you know, and a bunch of photographers would go, so you could get some nice pictures of your costumes and everything. Yeah, so I think that's kind of one of the main reasons, I guess, why people or cosplayers go. It's the social side, I think. For me, a lot of it is.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that thinks that. Yeah. Because yeah, you know that I have a company that runs cosplay events, and we just kind of look at what everyone does wrong at these events, and cosplayers just want to hang out and they want to have a good time, and they don't want to be sort of, you know, stressed out or cordoned off. They just want to roam around, take photos, take selfies, act silly, pose, which is quite interesting. I was because you were talking about Lex, who is Cosplex on the Facebook and the social media, and your scrapbooking, something you mentioned about your books, and that's like an art form in itself. I've had a look at some of your photographs, because that's something that I'm not used to, because if I was doing anything that was showing progress, it would just be like pictures, or it would be, you know, making a video or something like that. But yeah, I want to know a little bit more about your scrapbooking and where that all came from, and why you do it, and why you're why it's so crazily detailed. It's insane.
So those are more because they're more out of necessity. I don't do that for every costume, I have to say. I have got some here. I bought them just in case. Let me see if I can find one. Here's one of them. Oh, this was one. This was my one. I made a nice kind of bird feather covered folder for it. I'll get my new one out in a minute as well. This was for ECG when I was trying to qualify for the European Cosplay Gathering. So basically, whenever you enter a contest, a lot of the kind of big ones, so things like the World Cosplay Summit, the European Cosplay Gathering, Euro Cosplay, like see for all of those, you have to provide a progress book, basically to prove that you made your costume and that you can show step by step. So when you as a judge get given one of these, if I'm judging, I can kind of like have a flick through while they're talking. I can be like, oh yeah, there's their progress pictures. I see they made it like this while they're talking about something. So for example, this was one that I made my Queen Ravenna costume. So that you can kind of then just see bits of like my research, various like patterns I did in some weeks. So I'll do a really quick flick through, but you can then just see like vague progress, like I did all the little bird skulls and things. So we make all of these books. They just, yeah, it's got loads of writing. It's also like a way for me to document stuff as well. I usually keep like bits of fabric samples in the back. I have one. Hang on, I go and grab it. Whoop.
They are awesome.
This is my one at the moment. So I'm making this one at the moment for so me and Lex are going to try and enter the World Cosplay Summit again this year, which is held at MCM Expo, which I'm not massively looking forward to being there in a big costume in, but I usually try and avoid that, but we're going for it anyway. So for example, I happily show this. So this is for we're doing costumes from Final Fantasy IV. It's a really old school one based off the artwork of Amano, who I mentioned earlier. So I can kind of show you, so this is how I start stuff. So I kind of have a look at images of the character. I'll hold this up. And I just look at things that are influencing me, different corset designs, and I do little sketches all along the way, various bits. Talk about sleeves, various sleeves I look at, different bits, just all kinds of stuff. Skirts, gloves, and then I usually do like a little, here are my designs. And there are kind of some of my like sketches of how the costume all comes together. So we go. Ta-da! That's what I'm only up to on the moment on that one because it's not finished.
That's crazy. That's insane. They're so beautiful. And that's a requirement for the cosplay entry, is it? For the
for contests you have to do it. Just it's beneficial for you as the entrant and for the judge. Because for the entrant, I find them really helpful because I'll walk in with them and I can kind of flick through the book as I'm talking and say like, oh, and it kind of reminds me, because you basically, when you enter a contest, you usually have about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Talk about what you made. And it's really difficult to remember everything and talk about it in 5 minutes. So having those books out and kind of flicking through the pages and talking about it is a good way for me to remember as well and go, the corset, how did I put that together? And I can kind of go, here's a page on it, and kind of as I'm talking I can kind of point at pictures and stuff. And they're great obviously for the judges as well to kind of get an idea and have a look at. So yeah, they're good. They're good fun to make as well because it's kind of nice like little thing to have to look back on. In fact, we even made, I'll show another one really, I'll just show you this one really quickly, I won't go through it all, but when we did the finals for the European Cosplay Gathering, I did my Black Widow costume and I actually had a little book published of it just to go the extra mile. So I had a little hardback book done. It's so cute. So we had a little hardback book, and again I had like Black Widow images, bits of my costume and stuff in it. I think I put in, and then you can put things like I had the utility belts and all kinds of different bits I molded, all the wigs, I did the Loki helmet and stuff. So yeah, and they're kind of nice things to keep so I can, I don't know, look back on when I'm old. Remember I did something, I don't know.
That's pretty cool. That's awesome actually.
Yeah, they're nice to have.
I need to make some books of my work. That would be cool.
Yeah.
What you've entered some big cosplay competitions, haven't you? And you've won some, haven't you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So what have you entered and what have you won? The bigger ones.
Oh god, yeah. Well, I mean, so before the bigger ones, I used to do all the old like MCM masquerades and stuff across London and the Midlands and everything. And then the kind of bigger ones I've done were the World Cosplay Summit in 2012, where me and Lex, who I mentioned earlier, we were the first ever UK team to be involved in it. And then I did the European Cosplay Gathering, which is the one where the finals are held in France. And I did that with my friend Ben. And Lex also was the solo entrant for it, because you enter in groups or a solo.
Okay.
And then, but yeah, it was in 2014, and all three of us won. That was probably my proudest cosplay moment. So yeah, me and Ben both came first in group, and that's like out of everyone then past the qualifiers. So, you have to beat like, I'm trying to think how many other countries were involved at that time. Maybe 12, 13 countries.
That's pretty good.
You all qualify in your own country, and then you compete as like the best team of each country. So me and Ben won best group, and Lex also won best solo. So it was a nice double UK win for us that year. That was probably, that was just, it was just really good fun because it's like two of my best mates, and we all got to take home like the prize. We all worked really hard together as like a whole team, even though we were two separate teams. So I think that's what really did it for us.
Excellent. Have you noticed a change in cosplay competitions? Because obviously if you've been entering them for quite a while and you've entered them at various different levels, have you noticed any differences between the different types of competitions that you have and the different types of events? What are the biggest changes you would have noticed?
Yeah, they've got bigger. So again, this is the UK playing catch up a little bit. So the World Cosplay Summit, for example, has been going for, it's got to be going for 14, 15 years now, actually. And the UK's only been involved in the last 4 or 5 years. And things like, so we used to have in the UK just little masquerades, like the MCM Expo. They'd always have a masquerade like on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday was usually the bigger day. And it would just be, you just enter and do like a walk on. So it's just more like a catwalk kind of thing. Whereas now contests, you have, you've got a lot of big international ones. So the World Cosplay Summit is still going, but then you've got the European Cosplay Gathering. It's been going over the last 5, I think it's on its 6th year now. And like Eurocos, you've got C4, you've got then contests that aren't quite here. It's CSAF, which is a Chinese one that's international. There's a lot of international contests coming in now, and they just keep getting bigger and better. Like for example, when we did the European Cosplay Gathering, the finals in Paris, it's on a humongous stage. I think the audience is about 16,000. It's pretty nuts. It's like in a huge like hangar basically that they have it in, and it's amazing as a cosplayer to actually be part of that experience, because it's all about, again, this has become a bigger thing. It's not just making a big costume, it's about performance as well. So it's 50-50 on performance and costume, where it used to just be a lot more about like who's got the biggest flashiest costume or whatever, whereas now it's like a lot more like the performance quite often clinches it a bit more, I would say. So it's incredible going to see these shows now. Like I love going to watch them always, because you get to see the most amazing show put on, and people get bigger each time they do it. Like everyone comes up with tricks and stuff in them, different lighting cues they have, and all like the sounds and music and all the lighting that just gets bigger every time. So like sort of, it's fun, but it's like this big pressure. Like every time you enter one, you're like, oh, I've got to go bigger than like last time and find something else. And which is great though. Like, and it's really pushed people to come out with performances and stuff. So when you go to like the finals of all these international contests and get to see what everyone puts on, like it's really quite a big show that you get to see. It's amazing. So I think it's great actually how contests are going. I like it. Like, you get to really show off your costumes rather than just put months of work into something and you get to just walk up and down a catwalk like once and that's it. You get to show its whole capabilities off.
Well, I've never experienced competitions on that level, so I'll have to take your word for it. I've been to events where there were 16 people total, never mind 16,000. That's insane.
Yeah.
I can't believe we've rattled through an hour already. What I don't want to start on it, but what do you dislike most about cosplay competitions?
Probably the way that I just get really nervous.
just you.
I always get they haven't started yet for me, because obviously we're going to try for the World Cosplay Summit again at the end of May, and it's been all right at the moment, I think, because I've been on this film. I've not really had a chance to think much outside of that, but now that I'm starting to get a little bit more time to work on my projects and my costumes, I'm going to start getting the like cosplay sort of anxiety nightmares. Always get them. That like, actually I did have one already that we really messed up our skit, and we haven't even like recorded all the audio for our skit yet, but I dreamt that we messed it up somehow. I've had that dream already. Yeah, they're gonna start to set in. So I think that's, I don't know, I suppose on a personal level, the bit I hate the most.
Is that not like problem solving? If you dream about what potential problems you're going to have, you can kind of prepare for that in advance.
Yeah, and I get annoyed at myself in my dreams, and then when I wake up, I'm annoyed at myself about it. You know, and something's gone wrong. It's always that, like, the costume's not done, or we haven't rehearsed, and the contest's about to start or something. Even though I've never had that experience in my life, but I always dream about it.
You make scrapbooks, for God's sake. You know, I think you're prepared. I think you're prepared.
I know, but yeah, the anxiety. It's going to kick in soon, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Right, we fired through an hour, which is incredible. So we're going to try and get a few more questions in before we go, because I'm not done yet. We're going to try and do some rapid fire ones a little bit quicker. What would be your dream project if you had all the time and money in the world, and facilities which you already have? What would be your dream project, whether it's prop or cosplay or even work related? I think you kind of touched on the professional one. You'd like to work for Guillermo with the
yeah, professional wise, I'd like to work on Hellboy 3, so that's that's what I want to have happen. Cosplay wise, I've always had, no one is going to know what on earth this is, which is why I've never done it. But one of my dream ones that I'd like to do, just because I love the design so much, is actually like it's a character called Sis. It's from the Animatrix. Literally no one's gonna know what this is. It's like, you know, how have you ever seen the Animatrix?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of the ones from there where it's there's a girl and she's got this crazy big white hair and it's amazing, like samurai plated like body piece and like.
Oh yes. Yeah. The one you're talking about.
I've always wanted to make that one. I don't know why, it's been on my list forever and I just never got around to doing it. I don't think I'd even suit it, but that's been on the list and it still is, even though I go to a convention and be like, what the hell is that? But I really want to make it still. It's not even probably that taxing anymore to necessarily do. It's just finding the time. But that's one I'd really like to do. I would like to get around to doing her.
Does it matter if anybody knows what it is?
No, not really. Not really.
I didn't think you'd be bothered by something like that, considering all the anime people that you see.
Yeah.
I never know what the hell they're doing.
No, I do think people know a lot what my costumes are when I sometimes do them. They're like, really? You know, no one's going to know what I'm doing now. Like the ones that me and Lex are doing now, no one's really going to know what on earth we are, but really like them. I'd probably like to do more costumes from the Amano artwork I was talking about, which again, no one would know what on earth they are, but they're really pretty. And they're kind of fun and they're things that I really like doing. So I'd probably like to do more of those. Yeah, like I've just been having a lot of fun with my Amano artwork piece that I'm doing at the moment, of this costume of the book I just showed you. I've got bits of it here. I can bring up, I've got a corset sitting here I can show you a bit of. This is the thing I'm working on at the moment. Okay, go for it. It's a corset. But I've been doing all this like beading and stuff on it recently. All these little hand beaded bits, you know, any of that's sharp or not. And there we go. So that's my thing I've been doing at the moment. I started lining bits of it, but that's my thing for now. And that's also what this is, like my ice dye that I've been doing and beading loads of stuff. So this is all like ice dye technique that me and Lex had used. So you use ice and you pour dye all over the ice over fabric and you let it all set and it creates these like amazing swirl patterns. It's really cool.
That is crazy. Yeah,
so that's been like my fun kind of. So I'd like to do more stuff like that because it really suits the Amano artwork style, like this watercolory, like all this beautiful watercolor work that he does, and it kind of like that looks like a watercolor but on fabric. So, so I'd probably like to do a bit more stuff like that. I like doing his artwork as well because you can kind of do a little bit of your own thing with it, which is kind of fun. So you can do a bit of your own design work on it. Yeah, I suppose those are some more of mine. I don't really have a set dream costume or thing I want to make necessarily. I think I kind of go as the moment takes me.
That's okay. Mine changes every day anyway.
Yeah, I think everyone's probably done.
Yeah. Which do you prefer? Do you prefer a costume that allows you to be creative, or do you prefer going for like, you know, screen accuracy?
Ooh, I think I don't know which one I prefer because I kind of do both.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm doing a film costume, I get really set on wanting to make it like as accurate as possible. And I think they're almost harder because it's a costume that exists. So for example, I did a Tauriel costume from The Hobbit, and I knew all the fabrics they used. I knew they used a sage green deerskin for her hunting coat. I knew they used silk noir for her overcoat, and I knew the type of leather they used for her corset and everything. And I was like, damn it, I know the fabrics that they've used. I've kind of got to use the same thing. I had to source all these things. I ended up ordering about 10 like skins from America, that these like sage green deer skins that had been dyed, and I ordered like 10 of them over that was a nightmare to source. But I kind of like that challenge. So I do really enjoy that, but at the same time, it is really nice doing things like from a game or something, like what I'm doing now with the Amana artwork, like this stuff, because it is based off a drawing, but it's kind of a little bit loose, and there's quite often a lot of reference images, and they're all a bit different, so you can kind of take bits from each. So I think I like mixing it up. I've done a lot of film ones recently that I've been really accurate with, so this one's kind of a nice break from that, and then I'll probably get bored of that and want to do an accurate one again.
Excellent. You very eloquently didn't answer my question. I love it.
Yeah, sorry.
I like them both.
Yeah.
What's been your best moment so far throughout your career, whether that's on a personal level, cosplay, or professional, actually working in the industry? Best moment. One singular moment. You have to give me an answer for this one.
One moment.
One moment. The bestest moment.
I can't actually give the one moment. I'm going to have to wait a few years. I've done something really amazing recently that I can talk about in like 2 years.
Right, your second most amazing moment then.
Yeah, probably actually winning the European Cosplay Gathering with Lex and Ben. That was pretty awesome, just because we all worked like so hard for a year to get, more than a year actually, about a year and a half to get through the qualifiers all together and through the finals all together. And we worked as like this really big team, really supported each other, and we had like loads of family and friends out with us there, and when we won, like they were all crying and we were all crying, and it was like this big emotional moment. And so probably that's it. There we go.
Were you guys confident entering that, or are we just like, as far as we get, we'll be happy? Or did you actually think, yeah, we're in this to win it, we're not going to settle for anything less?
I was a bit tenacious, I would say. I was definitely like, I will take first and nothing else. I'm not usually like that, I promise. But I got really caught up in ECG and was like, if I don't win, I can't take it. Like, just because we'd worked so hard, and like, I felt like there was nothing else we could have done to be better than what we had. You know, like rehearsed like every weekend for like 2 months or something before the contest. And you know, we would like chalk out the whole, we'd go like a big car park and chalk out like the whole size of the stage there, so that we knew all of our points, and when we had to go to practice our choreography and then do it in the costumes, and you know, like we really went for it. And so we went out there, like obviously there's loads of amazing teams, and then you see everyone else, because you get 2 days of rehearsals before, and I saw everyone else rehearse, and I was like, oh my god, everyone else is really good. Started getting the fear, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be so gutted if I don't win. And which is awful, because I'm not usually like that. I've never been like that in any other contest. And sorry, big commotion outside. And I'm not usually like that at all. Like, I'm not like that now in contests, but just that particular one really was like, gotta get it. But I think that was good, because I had the attitude of like, no, I'm gonna win. Like, gotta do it. Really took it seriously.
See it, believe it, achieve it.
It was a bit nuts. Like, I went on a whole like even like 2 month like training program before I even went out there to like work out. Like, I started doing like I worked out a lot more every day, and like was really healthy beforehand, and even like my diet while I was out there during the contest. Like, everyone's partying and stuff for like, because it's quite often like a few days before the contest, because it's a whole big like thing and parades and stuff. And I was like, I'm not going to drink, I'm going to be really sensible, have like my yogurt in the morning with some fruit, and then I'm going to have this at lunch, and like this and that. So I really was like taking care of myself, and I took it ridiculously seriously.
Oh, it paid off, didn't it?
No, so yeah.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Definitely. There you go, people. You need discipline if you want to achieve it. Yeah. Eat your yogurt and fruit in the morning.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And I had vitamins. I had like my vitamin tablets every day. And
You're kidding me.
my penultimate question. This I'm expecting some interesting answers from you on this one.
Okay.
If you could choose three people, alive or dead, fictional or non-fictional, that one that you could hang out with, have a beer, chill, one that you could collaborate with artistically, or one that you would just kind of lose your shit over meeting, who would those three people be?
What was the first one? What's the first
So,
one?
the first person is someone you just hang out and have a beer with.
Someone I hang out and have a beer with.
The second is collaborate artistically, and then the other one is who you're going to fangirl over.
Okay, and it can be real or fictional.
It can
Okay,
be real, any character in existence.
personal thing.
Yeah.
Okay, first one I'd probably say a character that I've actually cosplayed called Cassandra Pendergast, who's from Dragon Age. I think she's a really awesome character, and I reckon she'd be pretty fun to chill out with and have a beer with and get her drunk and find some stories out. I think that'd be my one to have a beer with. Then what was the second one?
Collaborate.
Collaborate. Okay, collaborate artistically would probably be Lala Huete, who was one of the designers on Pan's Labyrinth. I would love to work with them. And the one that I would lose my shit over.
Yeah.
I've kind of met them.
Because I'm assuming that you've met a lot of people that you might lose your shit over. Yeah.
Someone that I did. Okay, so I met, like I think I mentioned him previously, Doug Jones, who was an influence of mine. He's a creature performer. For anyone who doesn't know, he was Pan in Pan's Labyrinth and the Pale Man, and he's Abe Sapien in Hellboy. He's a Silver Surfer, and he's done many other characters and stuff. And I met him while I was out in LA, and I tried really hard to keep my cool about it all. I'm not really the type of person to hugely fangirl like over anything, but meeting him, I was pretty much like, this is pretty cool. Like, I love this guy's body of work, and you know, he's one of the big influences of me for being in the industry and stuff. And so that was pretty awesome. So he's probably the person I have met and I have fangirled a bit over, which is something I don't usually tend towards.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. You know that saying about meeting your heroes? Were you disappointed?
No, not at all. Loveliest guy, really sweet. Gave us chatted for me to like half an hour, I think, or something. Like, gave up loads of his time to just chat with me. It was at a film screening, and he was just hanging out loads afterwards and was chatting to everyone. I was chatting to him for absolutely ages. Really nice guy.
I can imagine he's a pretty cool dude, to be honest. I wouldn't think he's got the whole celebrity bug.
No, not at all. No.
Awesome. And my last question. What advice do you have for people who are trying to do anything in this crazy industry, whether that's get into the movie industry or simply just start cosplaying? I'm sure it's more or less the same advice, I would think. I would hope.
So with the film industry, I suppose I would say, like, you just have to keep at it. I know that sounds really, it's not very helpful necessarily, but you just have to be quite tenacious about it, and you have to just not give up. You have to keep going, and you have to keep working, and I think it pays off. It's worth getting good photos of all your work and making a portfolio, whether that's, I have an online portfolio that I use more now, because I tend to, if I go to meetings, take my iPad with me and kind of flip through stuff, but I do still have prints of a lot of my work that I can give out to people at meetings afterwards to keep. So it's really worth getting good photos of everything you do, and collecting it and archiving it is really important, you know, and writing a good, you know, CV or cover letter that you can send out to companies, and you just have to keep at it. You have to, I know loads of people broke into the industry by just bringing companies like every week and just you got a job, no, really, you got a job, no, got, like, you know, and it worked for, you know, so you just kind of have to keep at it and just keep believing in yourself. I'd kind of say the same thing sort of goes for cosplay in a weird way, you know, that you want to again, you just kind of got to keep at it and not let little things stop you. I mean, I've had so many points where a costume's driven me absolutely bonkers. I think I got so mad once that I actually, like, I think I was working on a corset and it drove me so mad that I just ripped it out of the machine, threw it across my room, and I let it sit there at the end of the room for like a week, just while I was stewing over it and getting really mad. And then eventually I picked it up a week later and like finished working on it, and it turned out really nice. But you just have to like kind of keep at it, and you know, and you learn from every mistake, and it does take, you know, you're not gonna be amazing or anything overnight, and I think you learn something every time. Like, I still feel, I look at my last costume and go, ugh, oh, what the hell was I thinking? Why did I do that? That looks awful. And I learned from that time. And then, you know, then I make the next costume I do, and I think, oh, I learned so much more that time. It got so much better. And then I start a new costume and look at that one and go, oh, God on earth. So you'll always think that. And I think that's, even though slightly unhealthy at times, it's probably quite good, because it drives you more and it makes you push and work harder. And I suppose the same goes for the industry as well. You know, like I look at stuff I did in the industry a few years ago and I think, oh my God, how did anyone hire me when I was doing stuff like that? You know, so you just got to keep at it. And, you know, and it's good to look back on the mistakes you made and see how you can improve each time. I think that's probably a thing I've really learned as I've kind of gotten older as well, to, you know, kind of look back on that stuff and think, it's all right, it's fine. I had to start out somewhere, and then I think you'll always have that attitude, and it's a good attitude to have because you build on stuff that way. So I guess that's my kind of advice. I don't know if that's helpful, but
I think that is very sound advice. I couldn't have said it better myself. Excellent. Well, Laura, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I could probably pick your brains for another couple of hours, and I might once we go off the air. But I think we will leave it at that. We'll definitely have to get you back in, and we might have to have like an industry special or something like that, where we can talk about ins and outs of the movie industry. I'm kind of trying to think what I can do to spice up the show every now and again, but I definitely want to sort of focus on the different avenues, the different routes that you can go. So I think you might be a good person for the movie industry. But where can people find you on the internet to find out more about you and connect with you?
So my website is laurasindall.com, or on Word. You can contact me on there, and a lot of my portfolio is on there. And then also on Facebook, you can find me again. It's Laura Sindall, and you can find my page. I'm probably better, I would say, at responding to emails than I am Facebook messages. So if anyone wants to contact me, just drop me an email, which is laura@laurasindall.com. So, and I do try to respond to things quite quickly. And I'm always really willing to have people message me about things with costumes if they want help and stuff. And I try and get back and give feedback on things as well. So, so people can find me on there. And those will have my other various social media outlets on there as well.
You have Twitter and Instagram as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to everybody else who has tuned in and who are watching on YouTube. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.